To bring us in now to the conversation with Rob Pearson, who I'll bring up on stage. But first of all, I just want to share a little piece of content which illustrates just why LiveScore is an important organisation and will be so over the coming years.
Morning, Rob. How are you?
Morning. A very warm welcome to Sport for Business, streaming sport. Thanks for taking the time out to join us this morning. We just showed a small little clip there. It was perhaps one of the more surprising announcements of the year when the bulk of matches. So we know that there are going to be matches on RTE on Tuesday nights, including the final. We know that there are going to be some broadcast arrangements for the Wednesday night matches as well. But the bulk of the 100 and odd Champions League matches during the season are going to be available to view exclusively here in Ireland on LiveScore. That little orange button on our mobile telephones that have kept us up to speed and up to date. We saw Cristiano Ronaldo signing up as a brand ambassador with them earlier on this year, so we know that they're serious players. We probably weren't quite expecting them to make a move like this, though. What was the reaction like from you as somebody who was really on top of this?
I guess one of somewhat surprise, and having done, since this deal broke and having done a lot more background research on who LiveScore are, like it's become apparent that they are big, and I think that just the ubiquitous use of LiveScore among soccer fans to get their scores and to get their information from can't be understated. But the impact that they're going to have now on the broadcast market, we haven't quite been exposed to that yet. And I know that LiveScore have been doing it in different markets, but the broadcast element of their business hasn't been one that we've been overly exposed to at this time. But they are big, as you said, like they have big numbers internationally. They say they've got, I think, 2 million Irish and UK users, and they're obviously looking to grow that Irish user base. But Ronaldo, like they don't come any bigger than that. So clearly there's an ambition and there's a big budget behind this organization.
56 million users, I think, around the world is what they claim. And that is probably going to have increased by at least 50% over the course of the last couple of weeks. The big tournaments always drive that kind of thing. We saw the Danish team in the huddle after they had won their match, waiting to check. The TV commentators thought they were dialing in Christian Eriksen, but while that would have been important, it was perhaps a little bit more important to them in that moment to see how Belgium were getting on and to make sure that they had topped the group. It is ubiquitous, and anybody who really enjoys football or sport has got it on the phone. But what do you think is the experience going to be like in terms of that? I mean, you mentioned they've got existing broadcast arrangements across Turkey. They already do this. They broadcast the Champions League into Turkey, to Kazakhstan, to Azerbaijan, to a number of different countries out there. But Ireland is probably the first country, well, perhaps the country that's closest to some of the bigger leagues. And some people have suggested this may be a precursor to a move towards the UK. What do you think is the experience going to be like?
It's definitely going to be compromised, Rob. Having had a little bit of a look as to what they've done in other markets, their production values aren't at a level that we're used to. And, I think that people might say, oh, once I get the 90 minutes, that's okay. But the reality is that we like the glitz and the glamour that comes with the high and heavy production values that come with a big broadcaster. And they've got big names giving big analysis. They've got big technology and they've got their nice sets. And, there is a value and we do crave that. And I think that's been demonstrated if you look at the minute by minute viewership rates of TV figures, and there are peaks and troughs in these matches, but the peaks tend to be around the start of the game, just as the analysis is wrapping up, at halftime as they're coming back on, and again at full time. So it's interesting that dips in the viewership is actually while the action is on. So the most important piece is that bit of analysis, and I think that in the short term, that's going to be a challenge for new entrants to the market like LiveScore to really come in and to deliver the user experience that we're all looking for. And I'm not saying that they can't, but it's going to be a challenge for them. On a technical side of things, we are used to using Netflix and over-the-top broadcasters, but they've been more seamlessly integrated into the TV experience, I think, than LiveScore will be. Now, they do say that we'll be able to cast it onto our screen, but casting is just a little bit more of a clunky proposition, I think, than knowing that you go to channel 402 and you've got Sky Sports there, for example. So there will be a little bit for us to get used to, and simplicity is what we all want. And this move has taken the Champions League away from a very simple viewer experience into something that's a little bit more complicated, which is, gonna, in my view, negatively impact the overall user experience.
We're going to have LiveScore on with us before the start of the season to talk about exactly that, the production, the technology, how it's going to actually work. And you're right, some of us is a little bit more basic than we would be used to at the moment. But in many ways, that is a peculiarly sort of UK, Ireland, USA perspective. I was in France when Euro 16 was on, and watching the television there, it was interesting that the cameras would show all of the action from the match, and as the players were walking off the tunnel, it would cut to ads. And I was expecting then to come back and try and rustle up my old few words of French to see what was going on. But no, it was just advertising for the guts of 14 minutes. And then the cameras switched on when they were coming back out onto the pitch. It's the same in Spain. It's the same in Portugal. It's the same in many countries around the world that they don't have that. So perhaps that's something that we need to get used to, that the Dunphys and the Roy Keanes and, in US sport, the Troy Aikmans, and their commentary seems to be less important to other places around the world.
And also coming at a big expense to the broadcaster. And the other piece then that you've alluded to, at halftime, if it's not being filled with analysis, it's going to be filled with advertising. And, I think that people can, either, tune in, go get a cup of coffee or whatever it might be, but there will be more advertising that's coming as part of this model that LiveScore have adopted. So, and, part of that is going to be heavily focused around the betting industry. So, there will be more ads coming, there will be more betting ads than we're probably used to. And depending on your moral compass, that might have an impact or might not on you. Yeah,
I think a lot of fans are going to look on this and they're going to see, it might not be quite what we're used to, but it's free. And that's the undertaking which LiveScore has made, that for the duration of this deal, runs over the next 4 years, that all of these games will be available for free, which in many ways is the key consideration for sports fans. Teneo do some research each year looking at particularly the world of streaming this year. We highlighted much of it at our Sporting Year Ahead event that you were a key partner of earlier on in the year. Remind us of what some of the key figures in terms of our own adoption here in Ireland of streaming tech.
Yeah, so we've been, as you know, Rob, we've been running that research for over 10 years. We've been asking for the duration of that, how people are watching sport. And I think before we look at the streaming figures, it's important just to have a benchmark as to who's watching sport and how they are. And over those 10 years or so, the number of people watching sport live at home on TV has remained pretty steady. A little bit of a blip last year, but that's to be expected. But overall, the average is about 65% of Irish adults are watching sport at home live on TV. Now, we've been tracking streaming live sport while at home, so on your laptop, on your kitchen table, whatever it might be, for the last 3 years. And the numbers sort of started off 17%, 18%, crept up to 19% of Irish adults were streaming sport in 2020 live at home. Now that's kind of interesting in a year where there was a decline in the number of people overall watching sport, that there was still a slight incremental growth in the number of people streaming sport at home. So that's the number. Roughly 1 in 5 Irish adults stream sport while at home. But I think that the interesting information is more in the digging down deeper into the data, and who are the people who are more likely to stream sport. So in watching sport live on TV, male, female, not a big bias. As you get older, you're actually more likely to watch sport on TV. The opposite is true when it comes to streaming, and that may not come as a surprise to many people, but the younger you are, the more likely you are to be streaming sport while at home. 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds streamed a sporting event in 2020. That number shrinks down to 11% of people over 55. So a big difference in the age demographics there. Male, female, big difference there as well, Rob. 29% of males stream sport versus 9% of women. So another quite staggering difference there. But the biggest cohort of people who are streaming sport is young males. 67% of 18 to 24-year-old males streamed a sporting event in 2020. So that's where the sweet spot is.
67% of a market share for a TV broadcast would be huge. You know, like the Euros, you know, when France are playing in the Euros, that's the kind of number that they're moving towards. Now at the high points, it can head up towards 75%, but you know, 67% of the market, which advertisers still believe is the most important to them, of young males that are hardest to reach, is going to be very, very important in this section. I think it's interesting, the age side of it and whether that changes, because the older you are, the more likely you are to watch sport. The older you are, the less likely you are to watch sport on your mobile phone. But I think that's just because we're not used to it at the moment. I think that, I must admit, I've been following as much of the Euros, watching it on a stream, on a player on the side of another pitch, as I have on the big box at home over the course of this. And we saw England, Scotland. I think ITV were registering 4.8 million streams that they had of the game as well on Friday night. So I think that transition is happening, and it'll be really interesting to look at those figures in 2021 as well, because we'll have the Olympics taking place at strange times, that it would be perhaps much easier to flick on the player on your iPad or your phone while you're still lying in bed to watch Ireland winning lots of Olympic gold medals and things like that out in Tokyo. It feels like this has been a revolution which has just taken place over the course of the pandemic, but that's clearly not the case, because streaming has been in place there for quite a period of time. LiveScore used the betting market as a medium for really sort of pushing on that, but do you think are there trends within, and we'll speak about this a little bit again later, about sponsors actually bringing this to their audiences as well?
So I think that sponsors are going to want to make sure that their sports they're sponsoring are visible to the biggest eyeballs possible, and eyeballs are ultimately what's really important. And I think that sponsors of sporting organizations will have a vested interest in how this landscape actually plays out, and it's not going to be it's not going to be rights holders just taking the quick buck that's out there. Rights holders do need to walk that line between managing the overall health of their sport, which is guaranteeing eyeballs and interest, and the eyeballs and interest generate the sponsorship interest as well, which is another significant revenue source for them. So I think that's one way that sponsorship is going to be played into. But will we see more people coming in and sponsoring the halftime analysis of LiveScore's production? And quite possibly, I think that there's an advertising model there, but there's maybe a kind of broadcast sponsorship model that LiveScore might well go down as well.
Yeah, the surprise that came about from it was one thing, but we are still going to see all of the games on Tuesday night on RTE, and on Wednesday night on somewhere yet to be determined as to where that's likely to be. We'll still get to see the final live and free to air as well. Do you think that the other games, the Champions League always gets a boost after a big competition from the Euros, because we get to know more players and we actually get a greater interest in what's happening beyond the English Premier League and stuff like that? The timing of this could be particularly good for LiveScore, because they might be coming at it at a time when the audience is actually hungry for more. they're getting it for free. It's new. It's going to be sassy. You never know, you know, the timing of having Portugal coming here in September and having Cristiano Ronaldo as a LiveScore ambassador and then being in Dublin as well. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of activation around that. Is it exciting, this as a change in the way that we actually consume one of the biggest sporting events that we do during the year?
Absolutely. And I think, like, from a sporting fan, it's exciting. From someone with a vested interest in the business of sport, it's also really exciting. And there is a little bit of a perfect storm now in terms of the timing. I think that the pandemic has meant that people are much more savvy with, you know, consuming information and content, and maybe we didn't see the same jump in numbers of people streaming sport in 2020, but that was because there was an absence of sport. But we, as a population, we are much more open to different ways of consuming. I think that the general interest in sport after the Euros is absolutely going to give them, you know, a good platform to jump into. And the other thing is that, like, people have paved the way for this. We've seen DAZN, we've seen 11 Sports, we've seen Netflix, we've seen Amazon Prime dabble their toes into sports broadcasting, but they've all done so with a pay-per-view and with a subscription model. And this is free. And, you know, that definitely is going to open it up to a much wider audience who are primed for this type of content and these type of platforms.
It is indeed exciting times, and as I say, LiveScore have said that they will come on and do a session with us that we can bring to all of you later on in the summer, ahead of the start of the group stages of the UEFA Champions League. It is exciting. It is really interesting. There are so many different changes to the way that we are going to consume. And this, as a deal, is one that has landed right in the middle of it and is creating a lot of noise, creating a lot of ripples going out. Thanks very much to you, Rob Pearson, for helping to clarify just what some of those changes are going to be. And I look forward to touching base with you again during the summer as well, so that we can see how this whole world is developing. So for the moment, thanks very much to you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.